We start with some of the most high-profile, aka controversial, bills advancing in the legislature this week, including one that opens school vouchers to all. During the Sundays of session, we are hosting your South Florida lawmakers to talk about it all. Today, two of the newest members of the House are already making their marks. State Representative Ashley Gnatt, Democrat from Miami, and State Representative Alina Garcia, Republican from Southwest Miami-Dade, both with us live this morning. Ladies, so good to see you.
Hi, good morning.
I know it's kind of strange to do this via Zoom. You just jump right in and talk whenever you see fit. That's how we roll here. So I want to start out with the school voucher bill, universal vouchers. That was a #1 priority for House Speaker Paul Renner. He was here talking about it. #1 opponents are most of the Democrats who fear the demise of public schools. So Ashley, since you are that Democrat, let me start with you. Why do you think that, and let me just say it passed the House, the floor vote was this week, still has the Senate to go, but almost a foregone conclusion at this point with the Republican supermajority. Okay, so that said, Ashley, why do you see this as harmful to public schools?
Well, there's no accountability, and we see that in the language of the bill that parents who want to homeschool their children can get vouchers with no accountability.
Well, that actually, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that actually changed as the bill went through the process. There is some more accountability attached to homeschoolers now, but that said, go ahead, please.
Okay, so there's still aspects of that isn't truly transparent. If you look at the regulation of public schools and public teaching, as far as certification, how the money is used, we have a book that's probably like this thick. But when you look at public money, taxpayer funds being sent to charter schools and private schools that have different and a lot less regulation, there is that lack of accountability. And then, from my experience, I was a teacher in public schools in Mississippi and Miami. And a lot of times when you don't have those regulations for charter schools, parents will get sold a pipe dream and their child will go there. And then what will happen after all the FTE money is gone? They'll come back to public schools. And I was accountable for making sure that this student learned for that year, not knowing what tests they took, if they took any at those schools, where they started off when they started the school year. So for me, and my position and a lot of the Democrats, we saw that bill needed to go a lot further in making sure that public schools did not bear the burden of having to educate these students when they come back from these schools, where there's no guidelines or requirements for the type of reporting that public schools are held accountable to.
Understood. Alina, so take that, if you would. Accountability, there is, as we know, some accountability measures for private and charter schools right now, but to Ashley's point, there is a real dearth in other cases. But you know, what opponents, Alina, were talking about is that this is a massive, not my words, but opponents' words that we've read, a massive transfer of wealth, of taxpayer money to private school operators. I wonder if you would address that.
Well, the accountability for the private schools, you know, if you don't want your child, if you think they're doing a bad job, you just take your children out and they go bankrupt. They won't be able to operate. So there's absolute accountability through the parents. I wish I would have had House Bill 1 when my kids were growing up, because I sent my kids to parochial school and I had no help, and I was a single mom and I didn't meet the threshold to get any help. So this is great for the middle class. It is absolutely a wonderful bill. And this is not going to hurt the public education by any means, because public schools are going to be funded first. That's going to happen always first. And if there's enough money to go around, then everybody will be able to get the vouchers. But if there's not, then they'll be put on a waiting list, as it always happens. So I think this is a great thing. Competition is always good. It always makes us better. And empowering parents and students with customizable learning options will not only boost educational outcomes for individual students, but will create competition that raises the bar for schools across the state.
So I think you bring up a really interesting word, competition. We actually talked about that with House Speaker Paul Renner. So the way this would work, I kind of headline this for people when we talk about this. It's almost $8,000 per student that Florida gives per student right now, the FEFP. And so in public schools, public school population gets almost $8,000 per student, and now that would be in a voucher of sorts that follows the student to whichever school the family chooses. So Ashley, how the competition now that schools face to lure the children in, why wouldn't that make a more competitive playing field?
Let's talk about facts. So Florida is 45th in funding public schools, right? And so we keep hearing this message of choice, choice, choice. It's not about not being about choice, because 85% of parents in the state of Florida choose to send their children to public schools. What we're saying is, if we want public schools to be competitive, and it is truly about competition, then fully fund public schools. We've never been against parents having that option and having that choice. But when you're talking about taxpayer dollars going to charter and private schools, we do want to have some mechanisms of accountability. What happens to that money if they get kicked out? And also, to the point of choice or competition, these institutions are not required to accept students into the school. So we talk about waiting lists and everything. What students are being put on those wait lists? What students are not being accepted to these schools when we talk about competition? So
you're talking about how public schools accept everyone, private schools may not. Let me stop there. We need to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We actually lost Alina Garcia's feed. We're going to reconnect with her, and we'll all come back and reconvene right after this break. State Rep Democrat Ashley Gnatt from Miami, State Rep Alina Garcia, Republican from Southwest Miami-Dade. I want to turn now to you. Both are serving your first term, so it's great to talk to someone just kind of thrust into the process, and what a session it is to be your first. So one of the abortion bill is how everyone knows it, passed its first committee meeting this week. It's actually called Parental Support Bill. There's plenty of money and programs for parental support, but indeed it shortens the limit on abortions available to 6 weeks instead of 15 weeks. That was passed with a lot of controversy in last session. Alina Garcia, this one, unlike last session, this bill does have exceptions for victims of sex crimes, rape, incest. What is your take on the necessity of this bill, especially at a time nationally when there is so much scrutiny over abortion rights?
Well, Glenna, somebody has to protect the unborn child, Back in the day when Roe versus Wade passed, we didn't have birth control the way that we have it today. Most women have access to birth control, and it's not that abortion is going to be illegal. It's going to be up to 6 weeks, when we hear the heartbeat of the child. We already know that it's a child because there's a heartbeat. I personally know that there's a child from the moment of conception, but and I am pro-life. I think it's a good bill. I think we need to start re-educating people. Abortion is not, it should be like only in cases of where the mother's life is at stake, or where there's, where the exceptions for rape and incest.
Yeah, and I hear, this is such for many opponents of abortion outright, it's such a faith-based argument in opposition. I think a lot of the opposition is that at 6 weeks, many women just don't even know they're pregnant yet. Also, amniocentesis, when you know whether there is a fatal fetal defect, that can't happen until 16 weeks, which is well after the current ban as well. Ashley Gnatt, when you hear people who are adamant about saving lives, births, and the House bill sponsor actually said those words as well. What is the argument to that?
Well, first, I would say that the government should not be legislating what a person can do with their body. Everyone has sovereign control over their own body, and there's not one piece of legislation that tells a man what he can or cannot do with his body. So let's start there. Next, to your point, a lot of women don't find out that they're pregnant until after 6 weeks. And so what happens then? And what about the fact that Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth? A lot of it because of institutionalized racism in the medical field, where Black women are not believed about our pain symptoms. And so you have a high rate of Black women dying during pregnancy and childbirth. And so when all of these factors are taken into account, we have to look at how detrimental this is going to be on family structures, on the economic impact, about women not being able to go into the workplace or having access to prenatal health care. If we're really going to talk about parental rights or parental support, how about we start with providing access to medical care, expanding Medicaid and Medicare in Florida? How about we talk about providing substantial prenatal care? And this is in tandem with legislation that is being proposed that says children can't learn about healthcare and sex education until 6th grade. So how are we saying that we want people to, or protect the life, but we want to protect children to know about their body, to know, when it is appropriate or inappropriate to be touched by someone or not to be touched? And so all of these things have to be taken into account. Sorry.
So let me you bring up a very interesting sort of basket of bills, and the bill you're talking about is 1069, which is actually redoing sex education, making it available much later in the school career. Alina, Garcia, I say this not knowing whether you are up on specific bills, and if you're not, we totally respect that. So let's just talk about it from that framework. But 1069 is a bill that would essentially, until 6th grade, there is no sex education. So what do you think about that? I mean, if there is going to be more attention on personal responsibility and birth control and such, are the schools sort of responsible for making sure kids are taught that?
Well, I think parents are the ones that are responsible to teach their children about sex education. And I don't think that up to 6th grade, I don't think anybody's going to be having sex, before 6th grade. Hopefully, no. It's possible, but hopefully they should not be having sex before 6th grade. And and also going back to the former bill that we were speaking about, the abortion bill, if you don't want to get pregnant, why don't you just go on birth control? That's a great option. You could always not have sex, but if you don't want to get pregnant, go on birth control. That's a great option.
We've heard that argument. Let me just I have a statistic here that might be interesting to throw in here to this conversation. So last session, when the 15-week ban was being discussed, limit I should say, is being discussed, the CDC stats showed that 96% of the abortions that were performed in Florida were well before 15 weeks. And that was one of the arguments used by proponents, is that this is not going to affect a lot of people. That does not hold true for a 6-week limit. It's like 3 out of 4 are done in 6 weeks. But it stands to reason, if you look at the stats, that the people who are terminating pregnancies after that limit are the people who actually have issues, not careless sex issues, but issues with either the health of the baby or the mother. So I want to get your take on that.
That's why we have exceptions. We have exemptions.
Ashley, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I do. It's very easy to say, children shouldn't be having sex after 6th grade, right? What about the fact that children are preyed on by predators and should know about their body and should know what is correct touches or what is incorrect? As a former teacher, I take exception to that, because there are a lot of vulnerable children. What if they're in foster care? What if they don't have present parents? We can't just say, oh, parents have the responsibility. It would be nice if we lived in a society where parents were very engaged with their children, but that's not true for everyone. So as agents of our community as representatives in Tallahassee, we have a duty and responsibility to make sure that children who are vulnerable, populations of people in our communities that are vulnerable, have a way to be educated. And so it's not simply about women being careless and not being on birth control. That is not the representative population of people who are just, willy-nilly using abortion as birth control. And I might add that people don't use abortion as birth control. There are so many things that can be done on the preventative part of it. How about giving substantive sex education to learn about birth control? How about having jobs that really make it accessible for women and people who want to take birth control to be on birth control? How about reinforcing the use of condoms to men as well? And it's an all around totality of the circumstances that we have to think about. It's not simply just, oh, get on birth control.
So let me just, I want to just say that in this bill, there is money and programming for at least some of the things that you were just talking about as well.
Correct.
I told you that this would go quickly, and I just want to say to you both, I so find it valuable, and I'm so grateful that we can have these real debates, although fast, on substantive issues, and just a small taste of what's going to go down on the House floors in Tallahassee. I hope you'll both be back. Thanks so much.
I would love to be back.
Thanks for having us.
All right, take care.